All right, next up we have Dan Olsen. Hands up in the room if you've shipped something that failed. And keep your hand up if you thought, well, I would really have loved to have spent my time on something that didn't fail instead of doing the thing that failed. Yes, there we go. Excellent. So Dan is going to help us with that problem. So Dan is joining us from the US. He's come in from Silicon Valley. Dan Olsen is a product management trainer, consultant, and speaker. He wrote the best-selling book, The Lean Product Playbook. There's in Brexit, his contested book. He helps companies build strong product teams and individuals through his training and workshops. He also runs the Lean Product Meetup community, so it's another fantastic meetup based out of Silicon Valley that runs at times that are quite New Zealand friendly, and they do a remote option. I've joined a few of their talks. There's some really fantastic stuff there. Usually it's like mid-afternoon New Zealand time, so it is actually a really good resource for us down here in New Zealand as well. And thanks to Dan for making that available. So thanks so much, Dan. Welcome up.
Okay. For sure.
All right. Hey everybody, how's it going? I can't hear you guys. How's it going? Come on. Didn't you all just have coffee? Isn't Wellington supposed to have good coffee? Come on. All right, I'm gonna take a quick picture because this is a lovely group, if that's okay. Don't blink. And you know what's so big? I need to do a pano. Sorry guys. There we go. We're doing a pano. Okay, don't blink. Here we go. My phone is admonishing me to slow down. Sorry. All right, cool. Great. And then somebody said you got to get a selfie up here. So sorry, guys. Let's do it. All right. Look at that. All right. Sorry. Done. Okay. Let's get to the talk. I'm here. Excited to be here. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much to Product Aotearoa for having me here. DJ and Anthony and Chelsea for all their hard work, and Tasneem and Tokes, all that. I really appreciate it. You have a wonderful community here. I'm super excited. It's my first time to be here in New Zealand, so I'm really excited to be here. Everyone's been awesome. And I'm excited to share some advice with you today on what's that? Oh, on how to prioritize product needs. So as Anthony said, that's my book, Lean Product Playbook. I'm going to be sharing some advice from that. This is a short 30-minute movie version of my book. And several people were commenting how it's really nice to be around product people because a lot of times we don't get to compare notes with other people, especially from other companies. And so who is in product management, by the way? Okay, not surprising. Excellent, cool. So I want to start out by providing some really powerful advice, one of the most closely guarded secrets in the product management world, and that is the product manager's motto. Now, some of you may know, we have so many PMs there, some of you may know it, but I'm guessing many of you do not know the product manager's motto. It's a bit like Spider-Man's motto. We have any Spider-Man fans who can help me out? That's right. With great power comes great responsibility. That's Spider-Man's motto. The product manager's motto is similar. It's just a little different. And it's with great responsibility comes no power. And we're all laughing on the outside, but we're crying a little on the inside, right? It's like, we're on the hook for delivering successful products and hitting the OKRs and shipping, but nobody reports to us. We have to beg and cajole and buy people donuts and stuff to get them to do what we want, right? So what I like to start off this talk with is we've all heard the statistics about the high percentage of new products that fail. Like most people say 80%, some surveys say higher. And just to be crystal clear, it applies to new features. And Anthony just asked and most people raise their hand, right? And what I want to do is share with you what I think the two main reasons that contribute to this are and give you some tools to help increase your odds of success. And so I think to start off with, one of the things that leads us down this path of a higher probability of failure is a common question that we ask of our teams and of our stakeholders and our customers is, hey, what features should we build? That's where we kind of start the discussion. And I would argue that's not the best place to start the discussion, basically. Instead, we should be asking, what customer needs can we address? Right? That's the idea, basically. And this is where I'm curious, who's heard of problem space here before? All right, we got a lot. Good. I'm so glad. I've been talking about problem space for many, many years, and I'm excited to see people talk more about it. But I think that's the number one reason for that 80% failure rate is people starting in solution space or jumping to solution space. So I just want to take a sec to explain problem space versus solution space. Problem space is basically a customer problem, need, or benefit that the product should address. And the idea is problem space and solution space are kind of like two sides of the same coin, but we want to separate them and kind of map between them. That's the idea. So an example of a customer problem, and by the way, some people get really tripped up on terminology like, is it a need? Is it a want? Is it a flower? Is it a is it a vegetable? Is it like a pill? What is it? Is it a user story? Is it a job to be done? sometimes we get really, complex about our terminology. For me, it's all the same thing. It's all in the problem space. An example would be like, say I just felt like it was too hard to share photos with your friends, and I wanted to make it easier to share photos with your friends. That statement, make it easier to share photos with your friends, that is a problem space statement, right? I'm just strictly talking about the problem that I want to address, and I haven't mentioned any solution. You might have assumed that I was going to build a mobile app or a web app, but I didn't say that, right? That's the thing. We want to start in the problem space. Quick survey. Who knows the user story template as a blank? I want a blank so I can blank. Awesome. Everybody knows this. If you follow it, which we don't always do for some reason, when that new Jira ticket window comes up, we just get amnesia. It's like, build me the thing I want. It's like, as a customer, I want a blank so I can blank, enjoy this benefit. That so I can is the essence of the problem space. Like, why would a customer care? How is this going to create value for a customer, right? So that's the essence of problem space. In contrast, solution space is a specific implementation or design to address the need. If right after I said, hey, you know what, I want to make it easier to share photos with your friends, right after that I said, you know what, last month I launched an app on the App Store that does that, that app would be in the solution space. Or if I hadn't done any coding yet, but my friend Mary was a designer and she did a set of design mockups for me, that set of design mockups would be in the solution space. That's the idea. And as you can imagine, for any given problem, obviously there could be a million different possible solutions to that, right? So again, the point is, far too often teams go rushing into solution space. And I hope after this talk today, again, this is a learned behavior, a learned mindset. We live in the solution space, so it makes sense why our default way of thinking is the solution space. But hopefully after today's talk, when you go back to your feature team meetings or your discussions with stakeholders or customers, you'll start realizing how much of the time people are just starting in solution space. Hey, I think we should build X. Hey, I think we should build this feature, right? And you just want to kind of help, you can ask them, use the 5 whys to say, why would that be valuable, to try to bridge the conversation back to the problem space. So this dynamic is what I think contributes the most to that 80% failure rate. And to kind of tie it back to the key framework from my book, which is the product market fit pyramid, which is basically the 5 key hypotheses that you need to get right enough in order to achieve product market fit. When you are just doing feature set, you're jumping in at the 4th level of the pyramid, right? So you're kind of jumping into solution space and you have not necessarily articulated your customer, what are their needs, which of those are underserved, and what's your value prop going to be. And that's where the risk comes in, when you just jump into a solution without having those other things. I don't have time to go into a whole lot of detail about the problem space in my talk here today, but I wanted to share an example of what I mean by a problem space. And I want to do it for TurboTax. Basically, this is a product in the States. It sounds like some people here have to do their own taxes if you have like a consultant or contracting income. But basically in the States, everyone's got to do their taxes. Intuit, where I started my product management career, has a leading product that helps people with that. And if I was to define the problem space for TurboTax, it would be some benefits like this. Problem space statements like this: help me prepare my taxes, reduce my risk of getting audited, checking my return for errors, right? Saving me time preparing the taxes, saving me time filing them, maximizing my deductions so I reduce how much I have to pay, and costing less than an accountant, right? These are all atomic benefits. I like to start them with verbs. And there's a little bit of order to the chaos, to the madness, right? When you do discovery, people kind of don't say the same exact thing. So you have to kind of make sense of it all, right? But you can organize these by related benefits, which I call benefit ladders, because you kind of ask why and you go up. And so those 3 have to do with improving your confidence. Hey, I feel more confident about my taxes. The next 2 have to do with saving you time on various aspects of your taxes. And the 3rd is save money. It's funny, Kirsten said, hey, the Uber benefits for these products are save money, save time, and reduce risk. This is kind of this evergreen set of macro benefits that most products eventually contribute to, right? So when I say define your problem space, I mean create something like this for your product, right? Because on the team, if we summarize people's jobs with one word, it's like, what do developers do? They develop, and they develop in the solution space. Designers, what do? They design, and they're creating designs in the solution space. Obviously, good designers are also paying attention to the problem space, but at the end of the day, their artifacts and deliverables are in the solution space. So then who does that leave on the team out of the trio to think about the problem space? Product managers, right? And if I had to summarize our job in one word, I wouldn't call it manage because that's too vague. I would say our job is to define who our customers are and what are their needs, basically, right? And so if you're so busy as a PM, or people on your team are so busy just dealing with Scrum ceremonies and Jira, and reviewing mockups and doing UAT and talking to devs, it's like, who's spending time on the problem space, right? So once you do this, and the cool thing is, once you have a well-defined value prop, everything the TurboTax team is doing, most of what they're doing is just better ways of saving you more time on your taxes, saving you more money. And every once in a while, you add a new benefit ladder to your value prop, that's very exciting because you're unlocking more value, but there's plenty to be mined there. Okay, so once you define your problem space and you start in the problem space, the next thing that will come up is, okay, how do we decide out of all these needs that we could address, how do we decide which ones to focus on? And the lens that I like to look through it is, how do we decide which one's gonna create the most, has the most opportunity to create customer value? And I had to deal with this question early in my product management career, and I tried a lot of different approaches and frameworks. And the one that really worked the best and the one that I like is importance versus satisfaction. And so I want to share this with you. And it's, again, this is the second tool to de-risk that 80% thing. And it's really easy to use. So the importance is for whatever user need we're talking about, how, like saving time on your taxes, saving money on your taxes, whatever it is, how important is that need to the target customer? Everything is a function of the target customer, going back to the pyramid, right? In fact, that's what makes target customers be in the same group, is they give you the same importance scores or importance source cluster together, right? And so they can be low, medium, high importance for any given need. That's in the problem space. Now the satisfaction is on the x-axis. That is, however they're getting that need met today, how satisfied are they with how good a job that solution is providing for them? So this is in the solution space. This is a function of the customer as well as whatever solution they're using, right? And if you're thinking about how can I get this data, one way to think about it is if we were to survey our users, we could have a survey question with a scale asking how important is need X from not important to extremely important. This is a 5-point scale. You can think of it as 0% to 100%. And even when I'm not doing surveys, if I'm doing one-on-one customer discovery interviews, I like to break out the scale so that we can have a more precise conversation about how important it is, right? Because if I don't have a scale and I say how important that's kind of important, I'll get like a fuzzy answer because I want to compare the importance across different needs. And if need be, I might ask them to rank order between needs and things like that. On the satisfaction front, here we need a double-sided axis because people can be satisfied or they can be dissatisfied. And so I like a 7-point scale with a neutral middle. And then that's how you can get the data. And honestly though, you can use this tool without talking to any customers, as I like to jokingly say, a sample size is 0, just with your team's intuition and knowledge to get your initial hypotheses. The next thing I want to do is go and validate that with customers, but you can use it quickly with your team. So, let's divide it into quadrants so we can talk about the different areas and what each area implies. So the bottom left area, what is that saying? That's saying that we basically have low importance, whatever user need we're talking about is of low importance to our customer. And however they're getting it met today is low satisfaction. In the bottom right quadrant, it's saying, hey, whatever need we're talking about has low importance to the target customer, and they have high satisfaction with however they're getting it met today. At the end of the day, we want to avoid these two quadrants, right? You're not going to create customer value by going after these quadrants, right? Because it's fundamentally addressing a low importance need. So a general philosophy is to create more value, you have to address a higher importance need. And nobody does this on purpose. Nobody says, hey, let's go address a low importance need, right? How does that happen? They start with a solution, right? They start with a solution. And by the way, most of the VC trendy things, when you think about them, they're frankly solutions, right? Crypto, is it a solution or a problem? It's a solution, right? Even Gen AI, is it a solution or a problem, right? It's a solution. So that's what happens a lot. People either fall in love with a solution or they didn't validate the importance with their target customers, or they fell into the trap of thinking that they were the target customer and they thought it was important. Those are all reasons why you end up in those quadrants, but we want to avoid those quadrants if we can. The next quadrant is the upper right quadrant. So up there, we have a high importance of user needs, so that's better, because people are telling us it's high importance, but it's also high satisfaction. So it's like, yes, it's important, but I already found a need a solution that meets those needs well for me, right? That's what I call a competitive market. And the example I always think of up there is Google Internet Search. All right, let me get a little help from the audience. We'll do a little problem-based stuff. What problem does Google Internet Search solve for us? Just say it. Yeah, finding information, cool. And then we say, great, that's the need, find my information or find answers to my questions. And then I say, for most of the time that you need, when you have that need, is it low, medium, or high importance? What do we think? It's high, right? Except for those YouTube midnight searches. Other than those, it's prettier. It's high. So that's why it's high importance. And then if I ask you, hey, how good a job does Google Internet Search, how satisfied are you with Google Internet Search, low, medium, high, what would you say? High, right? Now it's funny, I've been giving this talk a couple years. Now we have ChatGPT that might be knocking on their door, disrupting them, right? And so we'll be talking about an example of that in a sec. And I'm not saying you should not ever consider entering a competitive market, but you hear people say you need to be 10x better. That's where you need to be 10x better. You basically kind of need a disruptive innovation to kind of try to win that quadrant over an incumbent that's already there. And that leaves the last quadrant up here, high importance of user need with low satisfaction of solutions, this is where the opportunities live, right? And they won't be there forever because there's other companies and teams trying to find and address these opportunities. But this is the second component to de-risk. If you can start in the problem space, and if you can find a problem that lives in that quadrant for your target customer, then you've just reduced that 80% risk significantly. Now, we have to get the right features, we have to do the right, development and design, obviously, but you've really de-risked it a lot. And I don't have time to go into all the details, but it's meant to be a visual framework. Basically, the closer you are to that upper left corner, the bigger the opportunity is. And in my book, I gave a formula for what that would be, but that's as far as I got. A couple years ago, I was actually able to finally create a heat map visualization of it when you run the numbers. And it's basically, I call it an opportunity score from 0 to 1, which kind of when you run the numbers in a quantitative way, it shows you what the opportunity is. And all it does, it really just reinforces that simple quadrant qualitative version that we had, which is, hey, the bottom left quadrant, it's blue, it's cold, not a big opportunity because it's low importance, right? Bottom right quadrant, even darker blue because it's low importance and high satisfaction. Upper right quadrant is pretty much blue because it's high satisfaction. So really the only place to create significant customer value is in that upper left quadrant. Now, how do you use this? It's super easy to use. And what you do is you basically, when you explore the problem space, you write each of your problem space statements on a Post-it, and then you talk with your team, and you can do high, medium, low. You don't need to do the numbers, but you can move them around, and then you just place the benefits there, right? And then you can either use the temperature, it's pretty obvious here, or proximity to that corner. So if we were to do that, it'd be like, hey, save money is number 1, save time is number 2, improve confidence is number 3. And oh, by the way, we probably shouldn't even work on improve confidence because it's so blue. We're not going to create value there, right? So that's how you actually, put it to use and use it. Now, the next thing I want to say, so the best thing you can do is find an opportunity in that upper left quadrant. The other way to create more value than what's out there is disruptive innovation. Now, I always have to caveat this by saying, especially where I live in Silicon Valley, way more people think they're doing disruptive innovation than they're actually doing it, right? You walk by the cafe, oh yeah, we're disrupting this space, okay, cool, right? So I want to show you how we can use the importance of satisfaction framework to give a proper definition of disruptive innovation and show an example of it. Luckily for me, I have an instructional video that just explains disruptive innovation, so I just want to play that for you real quick. Here we go.
Now for that one, this is a top to what we use on stage, but it's very, very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11,
the
and
amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's 1 louder, isn't it? It's not 10. You see, most blokes, be playing at 10. You're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there? Where?
I don't know.
Nowhere, exactly. What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. 1 louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
Okay. So we now, thanks to our friends at Spinal Tap, have our operational definition of disruptive innovation. It means taking it to 11. That's what it means. So what do I mean by that? Well, imagine this satisfaction scale. Instead of having low to high, going from 1 to 10, like the amps, all the other amps, right? What it means to do disruptive innovation and take it to 11 is, at one point in time, there's some product that people are like, 10 out of 10 satisfaction, it's awesome. And then as a true disruptive innovation comes along and redefines that axis. So it used to be a 10 is now a 9 or an 8 or a 5, depending on the level of disruption. That's what I mean by taking it to 11, right? The old highest score was a 10, and now we make it to 11. So I want to share an illustration of this by talking about a need that I think a lot of people have here. Who likes to listen to music on the go here? Cool, right? So that's the other thing is problem space. Problems do not change anywhere near as quickly as solutions. New solution waves come and go, especially with all those VC trends that we have, right? So the desire to listen to music on the go, people have had that for a long, long time. Let's jump in at the 80s and say if you're in the 80s and you wanted to listen to music on the go, what would be your go-to solution probably? The Walkman, right? Yeah, and I was there in the 80s. I remember getting a Walkman. It was awesome. Before that, you had to like have an FM transistor radio or listen in your car, but you couldn't take your music with you, your own music that you wanted to listen to and jump to whatever song you want, things like that, right? So if I asked people in the 80s, hey, how satisfied are you with your Walkman? They would all say 10 out of 10, right? That's 10, right? But then what happened, and I'm just gonna, then the MP3 player came along. Sorry for the Discman people out there. We don't have room for everything. When you ran with it, it would skip. I always get someone up, hey, Dan, where's the Discman in my interface? Anyway, so MP3 players came out, and honestly, the first few were kind of rough. I remember I think I had that exact one, and like the UI was bad, it didn't hold that many songs, and it's like the battery life wasn't good. But eventually, they held way more songs than a mixtape could. You didn't have to fast forward and rewind. You could have playlists. It was way lighter. You could jog with it better, right? Battery life was better, all that jazz, right? And then what happened? Then Apple came along with their iPod and crushed all the other MP3 players, right? It had the amazing click wheel, easy to use UI, held tons of songs. We actually in the workshop yesterday, does anybody remember the tagline from iPod back in the day? 1,000 songs in your pocket. That's the beauty. Even in my workshop, somebody yesterday remembered it. It's so long ago, but that's the power of a beautiful message, right? So 1,000 songs in your pocket, integration with the iTunes store, so you could just buy your music, auto sync, Firewire. And last but not least, those cool earbuds. Remember the white? Like, if you were something, if you had the white wires going down to your pocket like all the ads did, then you were cool, right? And then though, is anybody rocking their iPod these days? Probably not. We're all just listening on our phones, right? So each time the new technology, so it's interesting because just in a short amount of time for that same need of listening to music on the go, we saw multiple waves of disruptive innovation. Okay, I want to see if we can use this framework to explain why some products succeed and some products fail. And the two products I want to pick are Segway. People are laughing already. I love it. Did anyone ever own a Segway? It's okay if you did. It's okay. And then Uber, right? So I need audience participation for this. So let's start with Segway. So Segway, sorry, real quick, that was the personal transportation device. The founder, if you look at his interviews, he was convinced everybody in the world was gonna buy a Segway, He was like just all in, right? Fell in love with his solution. What problem did it do? How would we articulate the problem that the Segway was supposed to address? What do you think? Yeah, traveling short distances, right? And let's just take a step back. It may sound a little silly. How important is it to travel short distances every day? It's very important, right? Yeah, we take it for granted, right? It's like the fish, like what's water? So it's basically that, right? Travel short distances high, okay? Now, I know we all took our Segways here today, but before we had Segways, how did we travel? What was our top solution for traveling for short distances? For most people, not everybody, for most people. Walking, right. And if I ask the people, and obviously some people may have trouble walking or, pain or difficulty, I get that. But for people that were walking, how satisfied were you with walking? Low, medium, high? Right, it just kind of worked, right? So we just plotted up here, right? The need is high importance, the solution is high. So 10 out of 10, what was the Segway guy trying to do? He was trying to take it to 11. He was saying, yeah, I know you all think you're perfectly happy walking, but you have not seen the Segway yet, right? You wait till you see the Segway. And this is what happens. It happened in my workshop too. Someone was like, what about the Henry Ford quote? I'm like, you fall in love with this. Like, if you build it, they will come. Like, that is a very risky strategy, right? You should be really clear on what's going on. So to articulate what he thought he was going to do, he thought he was going to take it to 11 or 15 or something and push walking down, and nobody was going to be walking anymore. Unfortunately for him, that's not how things turn out. Most people didn't consider that speed benefit important, but it's also a great validation that the foundation of that product market fit pyramid is the customer, because he thought he was going to catch everybody. I like to think of a fishing analogy, right? The customer you're trying to catch is your fish. If you want to catch a kingfish, by the way, I've had a lot more kingfish ever here than I've ever had before. It was all lovely. Kingfish crudo was yummy. If you want to catch a kingfish, you got to think about what bait do I put on the hook, and that's what you throw in. That's your product. And you don't know what kind of fish you're going to catch, right? He thought he was going to get all the walking fish. Every fish that walks is going to come do it. They didn't. But it turns out he did catch two very specific species of fish that found it valuable. What micro customer segments found it valuable? Yeah, mall cops are one. Mall cops found it, right? And then somebody else said tourists, right? Hey, tourists did, right? Yeah. It's funny. I would just when I was in Auckland, I went to Waiheke. They didn't have Segways, so I got a scooter. It was a little more classy than that. But those are the two groups that basically found it useful. Now, the funny thing is, wherever all your theories are, once you throw your bait in the water and you catch the fish, you now have empirical data on who your target market is, right? And so now what you can do is like, we got two piles of fish here. We got a bunch of mall caught fish and a bunch of tourist fish. What is it? Why? Now we can say, why the heck did we catch those kind of fish? What is it about them? Why the Segway would be more appealing to them? What do you think? Was that? Lazy? Well, I think there's plenty of lazy non-tourists and mall cops. That's a good theory. They don't care if they look silly, sure. Huh? Time on their feet. Yeah, basically they walk a lot. They walk a lot, right? Either long distances or frequent. Like the mall cops constantly doing laps around all day. If you add it up, it's a lot of kilometers at the end of the day. The tourists, they could walk, but then they're not going to be able to see as much of the city, so it lets them cover more ground, right? So it's funny because now you could flip it down. Or Occam's razor theory and explanation is, hey, you tell me how many kilometers you walk a day, and if it's above 15, you're probably in our target market, and if it's below, it's not, right? That's kind of the simple Occam's razor thing. All right, let's switch to Uber. How would we describe the customer need that Uber addresses? Yeah, we need a verb. This is where my workshop people know you got to start with the verb. What we got? Okay, yeah, something we're feel like if you're going to go to Paris, you're going to take a plane. But yeah, you're going to be taken somewhere. But there's a key aspect, which is, well, why don't you just drive yourself? Because you can't drive yourself from it. So basically, something like, be driven where I need to go. How important is that? When you have that need, how important is it to be driven somewhere? Low, medium, high? High, right? As I like to say, like how important is it to get to your flight at the airport on time or that doctor's appointment? It's pretty high. So we plotted up here. Hopefully that makes sense, right? Be driven where I need to go, high importance. Before Uber came out, what was the top solution most people used to be driven where they needed to go? Taxis, right. So that's the solution. And then we can say, well, in general, what was the satisfaction level of taxis? Low, medium, or high? Right. Yeah, there are certain cities. I was just in London. London and New York, it's like public transportation. Probably they have high satisfaction, especially the London cabbies with knowledge and all the qualifications they need to have. And there are obviously good taxis out there. We could break it down into different dimensions, like how satisfied were you with how punctual the driver was did they arrive on time or not? How satisfied were you with how polite they were, with how clean the car was, with how safe you felt, with how convenient it was to pay the person? We can imagine some low satisfaction scores there, right? And they had a monopoly, but at least in the States, they have a monopoly. So there's reasons why they kind of lost track of customer service. But basically that's the deal, right? High importance need to be driven short distances and a low satisfaction solution. And then Uber comes along with their technology and just delivers a higher level of satisfaction. So Uber did a lot of things right to be so successful, but I think one of the main reasons is it was fundamentally an upper left quadrant need, like very close to that corner, like red, orange, hot, right? All right, the last thing I want to close out with is I've been telling you how you can use the importance versus satisfaction framework to identify potential opportunities for new products and new features. You can also use it to assess how we do in our product market fit with our current features and our current products. I'm switching the context a little bit, but I want to show you that you can also do that with an eye towards, hey, how much customer value is each feature creating? So you can use the quick and dirty Post-it note with the heat map. That's a good, fun, qualitative way. You can also do surveys. And this is an example where we surveyed thousands of behavior. And we had a lot of features in our product. We had 13 key features. And we basically said, hey, we want to ask importance and satisfaction for these 13 key features with an eye towards, are there any of these that are not meeting customer needs that we need to fix or address, or maybe they're all doing great, we don't know. So we surveyed them. So now instead of low, medium, high, we have importance going up to 100 and satisfaction going up to 100. And each of those 13 points is one of those features plotted with its importance and satisfaction value. And the number to the right of the point is just the satisfaction number so you can see it more easily, right? As the PM for this product, the first thing I honed in on was this feature. What were customers telling us? It was 100% important, the most important feature in our product, and we were delivering 98% satisfaction. By the way, the upper left corner is where there's the biggest opportunity. The upper right corner is where you get perfect feature market fit or product market fit, basically, right? That's about as close as you're gonna see in the real world to like ideal feature market fit. So we're like, cool, we're not gonna touch that. We had a cloud of features here in the middle. We had this one down here in the corner, but this feature was the closest one to the upper left corner. It was in the 80s, high importance, really low satisfaction in the 50s. So we use this framework to prioritize and say, okay, that feature is clearly not delivering as much customer value as we would like. We then switched to qualitative research, interviewed users, figured out what's the problems with this feature, redesigned it, relaunched it, and that's how we created the most value by assessing our current feature set. Yeah, and so just in summary, right, to go back to that 80% failure rate, the two main ways that you can increase your odds is avoid that temptation to jump to solutions, start in the problem space. If you detect, if somebody is recommending that we, go build feature X, go do this, go do that, just use that why technique to say, hey, I hear you recommending that we should build feature X. Can you just help me understand how would that be valuable to a customer? How would that benefit a customer, right? You're not asking in a challenging way, you're asking in a seek to understand way to hopefully get that person to go to the problem space. And maybe that solution is the best, but chances are there might be some other solutions, or chances are maybe they weren't even clear on the problem, right? So as PMs, make sure you have that single page artifact of a problem space definition. Is very powerful if everyone on your team is aligned on that. And then you can score each thing on importance and satisfaction. You can do it with your team with Post-it notes, high, medium, low, or you can do it the survey way that I showed you. And basically you can prioritize the opportunities based on how close they are to the upper left corner with the heat map. And there are two fundamental ways to create more value than what's out there. One, find an upper left quadrant opportunity, as we saw with Uber, or two, trying to take it to 11 with disruptive innovation. But you better be really clear on the customer need and not just fall in love with the solution, and be clear on how it's going to provide higher performance there, right? And then finally, you can assess the importance versus satisfaction for your features. As Anthony mentioned, for almost 11 years now, I've been running a meetup. I love engaging with product communities. I'm so excited to see there's such a large and vibrant product community here. Also a Product Tank Auckland, where I got to speak on Monday. So I invite everybody. It's funny, with COVID, we used to do it in person. With COVID, we took it online. And all of a sudden we got people from New Zealand and Australia showing up because it was like a 3 p.m. your time, and it's easy to come in and Zoom. Our next speaker is Steve Portugal, who wrote the book, How to Interview Users. And it's all about customer research. So if that's your bag, then come join us for that. And then I'd love to hear any feedback you have on my talk. You can hold up your phone to the QR code. Happy to share my slides with you. Happy to connect on LinkedIn. That's my website, and that's the meetup site. And my talks are also on my YouTube channel. So thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate it.